Let's flow. Let's connect and flow. Welcome to The Shift. This space is created with intention to care and lived experiences. What I share here is meant to inspire thought, deepen awareness, and encourage growth. At the same time, you are invited to listen with discernment, honor your own journey, and seek additional support when needed. Take what resonates and leave what does not. As I said, welcome. Welcome to this Soul Awakening podcast series. It is called Soulutions Workshop. This space is rooted in one understanding that helped me, that the soul at work is not burdened, that the soul, when you go to work, is participating. Each of us has a role, whether it's entrepreneur, employee, leader, assistant, creator, manager, or builder. I believe that these roles are not accidents. I believe that they're arenas or parts of a playground. The workplace is not separate from an awakening. It is the field where awakening is practiced. If work was never meant to feel, let's put it this way. What if work was never meant to feel like a punishment? What if it was made to always feel like we were playing? What if the soul is playing that role consciously? When consciousness is present, right? Most of us know, and then some of us are just learning that when consciousness is present, responsibility and joy, they're not opposites. They coexist, or better yet, they collaborate. In this workshop, we explore how the universal laws apply not only just in meditation, not just in theory, but in business, in leadership, in employment, in identity, in everywhere else in your life story. Single mom, single dad, parents, children, siblings, best friends, right? Any scenario. This is about playing your role consciously, allowing your soul to play its role, and you being conscious and aware. It's not about escaping, spiritual bypassing, it's not about resenting it. It's not about performing spiritually inside it, but it's, for me, I found it's about embodying awareness within it, within our roles when we go to work, whether it's 8 to 5, 9 to 5, or banker's hours. So let's begin. Let's start with its integration of soul, mind, and body. You can call it spirit essence, conscious awareness, and the body is actually the one that's doing the work to give the soul the experience. I'm not telling you this. This is lived experience. I'm sharing it with you. You get to take what resonates and leave what doesn't. Everything, body, mind, and soul, it's aligned. And every essence of you is participating. That's what embodiment is. Participation is not really abstract, even in spirituality. It's lived metaphysics. You're living it every day. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. This space is where we begin integrating the universal laws. No matter how much you learn them and put them on the shelf, if you don't integrate them and embody them and utilize them in your day to day, the laws are just like books on a bookshelf. It's not just theory. You learn to make it lived experiences. For me, work was never separate from growth. I didn't realize it in the beginning, but now I know. The soul doesn't clock out when we go to work. The body may report to a job, but the soul is also participating. So we're not just employees or entrepreneurs. We are soul, mind, and body explorers in that playground called work. The body performs the task, the mind interprets the experience, and the soul animates the purpose. It goes into the DNA and says, this is what I wanted to learn. The universal laws governs the outcome, whether we acknowledge them or not. That establishes your authority within your journey. When I first entered the workforce, I believed being a good employee meant doing exactly what I was told. I entered the first real workforce entry was when I was about 22ish, right after I had my first son. Right, 22ish. My ex-husband, but husband then, traveled a lot and wasn't really great with money. And he leaned a lot on making sure or allowing my mother to take care of us until he could figure it out. And to tell you the truth, she got tired of that. She said, "No, he's playing me. He's got the money. He just doesn't want to part with it because he's over in somewhere else, and he figures I'm going to take care of you. So, little girl," that's what she said to me. "You're a woman now. Go get a job, and you've got a sitter." I had, yeah. She said, "I got you. I got your, my grandson taken care of. Go get a job." And I just went, "Oh, okay." And the moment I said, "Oh, okay," opportunity opened up. It wasn't necessarily, guys, what I wanted. I didn't want to be an accounts receivable and collection person. I didn't even know myself then. But the door opened up and I stepped into it. And at that point in time, the only job I had before that was while I was going to college. And I worked in kind of like a department store. And I worked 3-4 hours a week. And it was basically, they put your hours on a board, and you were there. I think I worked, my hours were 5:45 till 10:20 or 9:20 or something like that. But that's where I learned that if you follow instructions and you respect the hierarchy, you meet, and to be a good employee, you meet others' expectations, right? But internally, I would often see alternative solutions when things were going on. I could see when something uh, needed to be done a different way, but the bosses, they weren't listening, or when leadership insisted on going in a different path, I used to get frustrated. And at that time, I thought my frustration was because of them. But in truth, as I started to learn more about the universal laws, and not like blatantly in my face they were, but I was learning about them nonetheless. They were showing themselves in various different ways. This frustration I felt was about me. It was about my voice. It was about, uh, at that time, I didn't know the word throat chakra, but it was about my voice not being yet integrated. I wasn't understanding how to communicate without confrontation. Right? That was my earliest lessons of the law of acceptance. Little bits and pieces of me coming out saying, well, what do you think, Sandra? Asking myself a question. I had to accept where I was developmentally capable, but not yet confident in expressing my perspective. Right? As I moved from company to company, something began to shift. I began to realize that being an employee didn't mean being silent. Instead of reacting emotionally, I instead of reacting emotionally with what I disagreed with, I began asking questions. It kind of took me, I allowed myself to go back to that child that was always asking questions, that was always rocking the boat. I began asking questions when I disagreed with something. Instead of making them the bad guy, why aren't they listening to me? They're just awful people, right? I would start, instead of telling them that's wrong, I would start asking a question. I learned to say, have you considered this approach? Took me a while, but that was because I was learning to accept me, small steps at a time. Right? That shift opened my communication. Now, nonetheless, I was communicating. Even if I was arguing with them, I was communicating. But the shift opened up communication that allowed us to actually have a conversation. I wasn't talking at them. I wasn't being rebellious from them seeing me talking at them. I was participating. An employee can participate. I took accountability in my action. We're going to talk about the law of accountability. We're going to talk about the law of acceptance and the law of accountability. Accountability, I learned, means I had to stop blaming other people. I had to stop blaming other people for not understanding something that I didn't say properly for them, you know, to discern it, if they were going to discern it, right? I had to show them through my action of having a conversation and actually asking uh, a question that showed that I wanted to be inclusive and that I wanted to participate and that I could contribute responsibly. Now, as I was moving through, all these different, it wasn't all these different. It was three very prominent companies that long term they allowed me to stay long term. That means they valued my commitment to working and helping the companies grow. I had 40 years in accounts receivable and collections, right? And they also, in each one, I also got to do the credit part. That means, when new companies were coming in, I was running credit checks and I was, uh, putting together packages on what we can allow them to spend, that whole kind of thing, right? And as I was doing this, there were many people that were outside that I would have conversations with that were talking about, owning a business or whatnot. And I'd sit and I'd have a conversation with them and I'd ask them questions. And they said, "Well, my goodness, Sandra, it seems like you just, rattled off all of this and gave me all this information. You should be, your own entrepreneur. You should have your own business and your own clients, right?" So we're going to talk about transitioning to entrepreneurship, um, uh, based on other people giving you the suggestion. But if you don't know yourself, you don't know if that's what you really want. I knew that this idea started trickling based on people started that said, "Oh, we noticed you can do this and you could do that and you should do this." And so for me, and they dressed it up and made it really uh, palatable, in that you have a desire for independence. You work for yourself. You don't have to have a clock, right? At some point, I began to believe entrepreneurship was the next stage of growth. But honestly, part of that desire was about, you know, uh, a it was about autonomy that I didn't know about yet within me. If I'm being completely honest, it was about the ego taking in information and allowing me to go half cocked with information that we had not dug deep enough in. I thought owning the business was the next step to automatically being in alignment because somebody else told me that's your next step. Doesn't mean it's true or not, but that's where I was. But for me, it wasn't true yet. But it was a catalyst for me to begin knowing myself. You've heard that before, know thyself. I made decisions before I fully knew myself. And I had to be responsible for those decisions. But at the time, we're taught not to be responsible for our decisions. We're taught if they don't work for us, if they don't make us feel comfortable, blame it on somebody else, right? Then the trickle happened. The expansion happened. The things that I hadn't asked myself began to show up within me. What are my natural strengths? I started to see all the stuff that other people were seeing. And I went, well, no, these can't be natural because I just I had to work here. This is what I have to do. This is what I do to support my family. But were they my natural strength? Did they come out in time of need? What is my energy capacity? Where do I thrive? Where do I thrive? Do I thrive in leadership? Do I thrive in being a worker bee? Do I strive in owning my own? Would I strive in owning my own company? Asking myself these questions. And actually, I started in little increment questions that I didn't know those were in what the word for it was called embodiment. But I started when it was time to move up in. I had very wonderful supervisors, except for one, supervisors who wanted me to move into managerial uh, positions, who sent me to school and made sure that I knew that the company would pay for me to go to school. And of course, I took the opportunities, but I never, for the first couple of times that I was in a position of a management position, did I ever ask, do I really want to manage people? Right? Here's the integration, right? I have to know thyself. I keep being put in these positions of these work ethic positions and not knowing if I really wanted it. If I was if that by and being annoyed at the people that were I was supposed to be managing, right? I didn't pay attention to what was being revealed to me. I didn't pay attention to the things that I was focused on. I'm focused on all the negative stuff about being a manager. It, and the negative kept coming back until one day I said, do I really want to do this? Sometimes we have to focus on service or status. And it's our question to ask. I was always about asking questions to others because I wanted others to give me the answer about me, especially when things didn't unfold the way I expected. I initially always looked outward, but eventually, gradually, the law of accountability brought me back inward. It's the law of accountability is always in movement. Universal laws are always in movement. They're always active, right? So these are the universal laws that we're going to be embarking in this solutions workshop. Okay. This is episode number 1, just an introductory. Got 8 more episodes. I began to recognize patterns, and the patterns weren't random. Patterns are sometimes governed by vibrational cosmic, not sometimes, all the time, governed by vibrational cosmic principles. I came to understand that the universal laws operate everywhere. And these are the ones that we're going to focus on that operate in our professional life, that are we're not aware of. We're conscious that we go to work, but we're not aware that they are constantly active. These laws don't shut down because we actively go to work. Your soul doesn't tune out because you go to work, right? So the law of acceptance, seeing reality clearly before trying to change it. You can't change something if you don't accept that something needs changing. The law of accountability, owning your own participation in every outcome. You participated in it. I participated in it. Whether we were conscious of it or not, we still participated. We made a choice. We put it out there, and the law, like the law of cause and effect says, the energy will come back. And who does it come back to? If I put it out there, it's going to come back to me. If you put it out there, it's going to come back to you. The law of action, moving beyond ideas into disciplined, if you want to use that word, you can find a better word. You can use sovereign execution. Sovereign means that it solely belongs to, you're responsible for that execution, making it, bringing it in to the physical realm. The law of adjustment, pivoting, right? Pivoting, hold on just a second. There we go. So, I'm sorry. The law of adjustment is about pivoting intelligently instead of quitting emotionally. The law of adjustment gives you an opportunity to change. I had a friend who had a plan, her life plan. And she would get so annoyed because things weren't working. And she would say to me, Sandra, why with you, it always seems that you always get to where you want to be. And I told her, if I set an intention, I'm not afraid to change it midstream if it's not working for my highest and greatest good. I'm not afraid to adjust my dream. Whether it's my dream partner or my dream job. But that only came with baby steps. But the law of adjustment says that you get to pivot. And the law of circulation says you get to value exchange and energy flow. Not only do you get to understand it, you get to take it from a monetary value, and you get to understand that currency comes in all forms. You're going to talk about attention, the law of attention. Where you focus your attention is where energy goes to create for you. If you react to things constantly, then energy is going to be just exactly that. It's going to take you to a place where you're constantly reacting and constantly being bombarded with negative energy. Energy is just saying, let me create for you. I need you to be part of the experience. And then we're going to talk about the law of opulence, refining prosperity as alignment and not access or excess. Actually, it's better. That's the word that I think is better. Excess, because we're always thinking we got to have more than we need. I want more. I want to be, I want to keep up with the Joneses. Before I close today, because this will be probably the shortest episode. Before I close today, I want to share something a little more personal of me, of why I started this workshop. Because it's not just theory for me. I didn't begin in entrepreneurship. I began, like I said, in accounts receivable and collections and credit, right? I worked inside growing businesses, mostly mom and pop stores or companies that expanded into corporations and then, hey, eventually sold their companies. At the time, I thought I was just doing a job. I didn't think much about it because I was making money to, support my children, pay the rent, buy a car, and upon occasion, take my kids on field trips or, Disneyland or whatnot. But what I now understand is that I was being trained for all the knowledge that I didn't know. My little baby steps, I was being trained. I worked in accounts receivable, and I was allowed to see the nervous system of companies. I was allowed to see cash flow. I was allowed to see who pays on time. I was allowed to see who continuously delays their payments. I was allowed to see the patterns of stress as an employee sitting in meetings with the bigwigs. I was allowed to see how leadership responds when money tightens. I was allowed to see how money reveals character and how pressure reveals maturity, if any. And this was long before I had language for it. I was watching universal laws unfold in real time, but I didn't have labels for it. I was watching the law of circulation operate through uh, the company that I work for, their cash flow. I was watching the law of accountability show up in leadership and decisions that were being made in our meetings. I was watching the law of adjustment determine whether a company grew or whether it stayed stagnant. And here's the honest part, I didn't even want to be an employee at first. I thought employment was very limiting. I thought ownership meant freedom. right? Because, well, and I thought it because that's the way it was presented to me. Every time I would listen to somebody talk about being an employee, oh, I wish I just owned my own business. I wouldn't have to deal with this rigmarole and all these people and all their two-faced stuff, right? But in hindsight, that season was apprenticeship. Structure was developing, helping me to develop discipline. Responsibility was helping me to develop clarity. Accountability was helping me shape my character. I grew with those companies that I worked for, and I stayed at, up until they sold. One I stayed for 8 years, another I stayed for almost 16, another I stayed for a good 12. And then there were little companies in and out of that that I stayed here 2 years or 4 years. And I never really thought about it, but they counted for something because they were part of my building blocks. I grew with these companies. I was promoted not because I demanded authority, not to say I didn't at first, because I was taught if you're going to get anything in this world, you got to tell people what you want and make them and make them listen, right? But I was promoted not because I was demanding authority, but because I developed the competence, which they taught me, and they paid me well to go to school and learn it. I developed consistency and I developed trust. They trusted me. And for the most part, I trusted them. I'm not saying they were perfect, and I'm not saying they made some wise decisions. The universal laws were developing me from inside, and I didn't even know it, from inside out. I didn't know it that they were developing me into someone else, into a new me, a new version of me. And there was nothing wrong with that. And I was still an employee, and that was okay. I'm just saying. And when I eventually stepped forward into doing my entrepreneurship, moving in to setting up my own business, I realized something very sobering, maybe. Skill is not the same as self knowledge. You can have all the skill in the world, but if you don't know yourself and what you really want or what you don't really want to bring to the table, you can understand systems, you can understand cash flow, you can understand structure, but if you don't know yourself, you will build from confusion. And when I started, getting my business license and building all the things that I would need to have a home-based business, there's things I didn't know about myself. And after I finished getting all my ducks in the row and the paperwork perfect, I got stuck because guess what? I knew nothing about marketing. And I knew nothing about the questions that marketing was asking of me. And it confused me. And guess what I did? I put it on a back burner. This is why this workshop has been in my mind's eye for at least since 2020, right? Because I said, that's what I want to do, is I want to teach people about knowing about themselves before they go and decide they want to do business, have a business. Because if you know only about your product and nothing else, your business will probably fail. I watched it happen. Not with me, but with others. And they would say, Sandy, I wish I had known what you're telling me now, what you're sharing with me now. And I said, guess what? Now you know. Go try again. Now you know. And you compare it with understanding your systems and understanding cash flow and understanding structure, because now you know more about yourself. That is why this workshop begins with integration, because before we build anything, we must know who is building it. Right? So as we move into the next episode, we'll begin with the first law of acceptance and what it is truly to, or what it means truly to accept who you are, not just professionally, who you are, your wants, your desires. And then does that translate into professionally or work before trying to change? You have to know who you are in order to know where you want to change. And when you begin to integrate this information consciously and aware, or being consciously aware of integrating them, everything starts to change. And remember, this workshop is not about telling you who you need to be or who you should be. It's about sharing what I've learned through my experience. If you are an employee, these laws apply. If you are an entrepreneur, these laws apply. If you are someone building something, these universal laws apply. If you are rebuilding yourself from the inside out, these laws apply. So I'm going to leave you with some reflective questions, some that I had to ask myself, baby steps. Have I accepted who I am professionally? And did I take a step back from that and discern who I am before professionally? Am I accountable for my current results? Am I accountable for all the choices that I have made? Conscious or unconscious? And am I acting or being proactive consistently? Am I adjusting my situation wisely for my highest and greatest good? What am I circulating? What type of energy am I circulating? Where is my attention? If energy goes where attention flows, where is my attention? Ask yourself, what does opulence truly mean to me? And if you don't know the definition of opulence, look it up. Here in this series, as any of the other series that I have done, This is number 5, series number 5. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. But understand this, the universal laws are not operating in your work life. Wait a minute, let me put this a different way. The universal laws are operating in your work life, whether you are aware of them or acknowledge them or not. So, so what I would like you to do, hold on. So what I would like you to do is replay this. Go back and when you see it in video on demand in YouTube or Facebook or on my Spotify, replay this. Excuse me. Ask yourself embodying questions about you. Because you hear videos tell you not to be an employee, to go off and own your own business, but they're not telling you the ins and outs of it. Maybe you enjoy being an employee, but you just need to know what type of employee you want to be. Maybe you enjoy working for a company that holds your same look in clothes, or supporting people. Maybe you worked in a family-owned business that has given you so much because your parents started it because they wanted to serve the community. So maybe you do want to take over and be an entrepreneur. Know thyself. So until next Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Soul Awakening podcast series. It's called Soul, Soul, Lucian's Workshop. It's the shift. See you at episode 2. Wholeness and balanced love to you and yours. Take care. One love.